Okay, so you're in for an interesting video today. I'm finally going to tackle the process of upfitting my truck with a couple of wires. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm prepping my truck, at least the interior, with upfitter wires that are already connected to the switches and the relay harness and all of your fuses and everything, which is right down there. I'm going to pull that assembly out. I'm going to untwine the wires that are bundled up from Ford. We're going to run some marine grade wire all the way around into this side, because that side right there is not a good access point into the vehicle, because it would require drilling through a grommet. I don't want to do that because you never know what's on the other side. Clearly it's in an area where if you're not careful you could damage a lot of things, including your air conditioner. So we are going to start this project off by removing the upfitter assembly here. You simply unsnap it, pull it out of the way, and you'll have your wiring harness. And then we're going to run our wires, get them into the vehicle so I can have some upfitter wires available to the inside of the vehicle so I can turn some things on or off. Hang tight, I'll be right back. Okay, so my upfitter wires come down below this. This is going to house all of my fuses and relays for my upfitters. I'm simply going to pop the screwdriver down here. You may not be able to see what I'm accessing, but there's two little tabs. You don't want to go with this one in the middle right here. The two tabs, one's right there, one's right there. Take a screwdriver and you pop it like that. So now that we have that loose, I should be able to pull this up and out. You got harnesses kind of everywhere in this truck. I mean, like everywhere. So definitely want to be a little careful whenever you're pulling stuff that you don't pull too hard. And then you also understand what things could get caught on, because that's what I'm trying to figure out right here at the moment. All right, so these right here are my upfitter wires. I can probably pull this out a little bit further as soon as I get it around there. All right, so these are all my upfitter wires. If I unbundle this kind of sloppy tape work, I think they actually bundled some extra slack in there for me, so let's see. Not specifically for me, but you guys know what I'm talking about. All right, I'm gonna use both hands for this. Can't even position a tripod over here, so I'll be right back as soon as I get all of that electrical tape off of the bundle. Okay, I got most of it starting to come off here. Okay, so now we actually have some slack here. Looks like you probably have about 6 inches of slack. Then all your wires are going to be right here. You're going to have 6 of them. Actually, you have more than 6 of them. So we're going to have to go through and find out which ones specifically are for the upfitters we want to access. You have 2 huge ones here, which I'm assuming are going to be your 40 amp connections. And then you have a bunch of smaller ones. And I assume some of these are probably going to be for PTO. But you're going to want to know, okay, yeah, they are right there. You can see PTO. But you are going to want to know what you are using for what, and there's more electrical tape on here. So let me go ahead and get all the electrical tape off. Okay, so we have all the tape off. You got plenty of wires here, and what's kind of cool is that they give you a bunch of extra wires for your PTO. They give you your 6 upfitter wires right here. They give you a run start out wire, PTO controls, and then they give you a 20 amp positive connection, just a constant positive connection in case you need that. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I have my voltmeter out, and I want to see specifically which one the switches actually actuate when I hit my upfitters. So I have aux 1 turned on. I have the truck in the on position, so they're all getting power, and I'm going to go through them with a multimeter and find out which one has power, so I know specifically which one I want to wire into, because that's the one I want to use for some of the interior stuff I'm going to be doing. I'm going to save the higher current ones for any upgrades to the outside of the truck that need higher amperage. But on the inside of the vehicle, really you don't need anything more than maybe 15 amps for what I'm going to be using. So I just turned off that wire just to make sure that when I touch it this time, it doesn't read 12 volts. And it does not. So I know which wire is my aux 1 wire. And the wire that I'll be using is going to be marine grade wire. It has a marine grade coating around it, as well as insulated wires, pure copper, oxygen free strands. This is the good stuff. This stuff is a lot more expensive than most wiring you might use inside of a vehicle, but it's nice and neat. It is definitely beyond the capacity I'll need. This is going to be 12 gauge wire, so this is perfect for the application that I'll be running today. Okay, so I used a weatherproof splice down here. I also heat shrunk the connection as well, and now I'm going to wrap it in 3M 33 plus electrical tape. Okay, so I have my wiring taped up and bundled up and loomed. I actually recycled some of the fabric tape that Ford uses, and I covered up this wire right here so it looked a lot nicer, as well as the wire going to the actual negative terminal of the battery. So the positive terminal is the upfitter wire, and the negative terminal, or the ground, is going to be the negative part of the battery. So everything is ran the way I want to run it. I have to run the wire all the way around the front, again, because it does not make sense to try to punch a hole through there blindly and hope you don't hit something. I know some people are willing to take that risk. Sometimes I am, depending on what I know about what's on the other side of the firewall. But in this case, I don't know a heck of a lot about where Ford put everything back there, and I don't want to risk it. So we're going to be running it underneath this cowling right here, all the way around to the other side, where there's a lot more clearance and a lot more opportunity to feed a wire through. Okay, so this part was a little more difficult than I thought it would be, only because I had to route the wires around a vehicle that I'm not very familiar with. I routed the wire around here. I took this whole top piece off. That was super simple. It's like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe about 10 little snap clips. You take the top part out and the whole thing comes out very easily, especially if you have a trim removal tool like this. You can get them on Amazon for about 10 bucks. And got all that out. I routed the wire under here, down here, under this, up. I zip tied it in place back here so it wouldn't hit that radiator right down there that you probably can't see. And then I have it coming out right here. It'll route around through here, all the way to the side, and then it'll punch through and go into the truck over here. This has taken the longest part. As always, anytime you're routing wires, you have to be very careful. You have to be kind of strategic where you want to run them, and you just have to make sure you're not going to damage anything, or over the course of time it's not going to rub up against something or smack into something that could fray or cut into the wire. So that's what we're being very cautious of. Good thing about this marine grade wire is it has two forms of insulation. It has the outer, and then each wire has its own insulation on it as well that's very thick. So that'll also prevent things from possibly chafing against the wire, causing issues. Let's go ahead and get all this put back together. Let's get the wire ran so we can get inside of the vehicle. Now, I know some people are going to want to know how I got the wire through. So you see that copper clothes hanger right there? And you see that big bushing down there? I basically went next to the wiring harness from the inside and I poked it through. Then once it got through, I took a razor knife and I cut that piece right there a little bit wider, so when I pull the wire through, it'll go through smoothly. I'm also going to spray a little bit of white lithium grease on the wire so it goes through that hole very easily. I split the wires apart and used one of the wires taped to it, and at least that part came through, so now I just got to pull the rest of it through, which should be a little easier, hopefully. Yay, good news. Got the whole wire to come through. Like I said, I taped it to just one, and then I just pulled on it until the whole thing came through. The hole's big enough, it's just a tight fit. Anytime you're trying to get wires through the dash, it's never that easy. And yeah, I was able to get the wire through, so it makes me happy. Now I'm just gonna route it and get it where I need it to go. So a real important part, seemingly maybe less important than you might think, but it's actually really important, is to create what's called a drip loop. And that's whenever the wire is going into something important, you want it right before it goes in to create a loop where it goes down like this, even if it's a subtle loop. Mainly because if moisture or water gets in here and it follows the wire down, you don't want it following the wire into the actual vehicle or into your firewall. You want it to go to that bottom of that loop and drip off. So I don't know if you can see it, but I created a drip loop in there. Sorry if it's hard to see. You can see it right there. And I'm also going to secure the wire so it creates that drip loop permanently. It's not just gonna be a temporary thing and then I hit a bump and it goes away. Okay, so we have the wire ran. It's tucked up nice and clean all the way under the dash. It wraps all the way around. One of the easiest places to route it is actually in this area right here. And the only part that you might see is just that little piece right there. But when you look over here, it disappears and you don't see it on the other side either. So that's the only part. I might try to tuck it in there a little better, but the problem with this wire that I'm using is that it's very stiff and it can create a big gap or space between things. So I'm going to try to get it to tuck in a little bit better if I can, but if not, I'm fine with just that little piece because, again, the minute you get over here, you don't see the wire anymore, or you barely see it. Okay, so we are done. I'm going to show you what we wired up, and hopefully you like it. So I don't know if you remember that from the old truck, but it is a set of 12-volt cigarette lighter style adapters, so I can plug things in like my rear view mirror camera or anything else. So now I have a total of 4 of these in my truck as opposed to just 2, and then there's 2 USB chargers in the center as well, so I can add some more stuff, not worrying about if it's connected to the vehicle. Now that is fused. That has a 10 amp fuse in it. I have the 10 amp upfitter switch wired to it. It might be a 15 amp, but I think it's a 10 amp upfitter switch. And if it overloads this, it'll pop a fuse. If it overloads the truck, it'll pop a fuse. So I'm in good shape. So what we want to do now is I'm going to remote start the truck. And that usually will let you turn on an upfitter switch. And I want to see if when I do that, this comes on. There we go. Check it out. See, stuff like that just makes me happy. That's a really good setup now. Don't have to worry about it staying on all the time. When the vehicle shuts off, that shuts off now. I don't have to worry about the 75-minute timer that these are on. So your factory power sockets, at least the 12-volt sockets, stay on for 75 minutes after you turn the vehicle off and leave. And I just don't need that type of draw constantly going on the battery. So that is really cool. I can turn it on up here with the upfitter switch now, and it kicks on. That's awesome. What do you guys think? This is one of those installs that is, man, it can be a bit of a headache. I'm not gonna lie to you. It can absolutely be something that can stress you out. It certainly is one of those things when you're doing it on a new vehicle, a vehicle you haven't messed with before in the past. It can absolutely, I'm just gonna say it can absolutely make you feel nervous and anxious because you don't want to punch holes and do things that you have never done before in a vehicle you've never worked on before. But we got it connected now. I'm able to turn on and off the additional power sockets that I have in here now. Again, 2 12-volt and 2 USB, and it's hidden really well out of the way. A couple little hacks that you may not know. So when I was running this wire behind here, I dropped my box down here so I could get into the space behind here and run the wire. And there's a big void behind there that you can actually put a wire through here, pull it all the way back, and have the wire behind all this without having to have it just stuffed in between there, if that makes sense. Those of you who install will know what I'm talking about, because sometimes you just have a wire stuffed between 2 pieces and it's sitting there. But in this case, you have a nice little void back there that allows you to hide the wire and not have to worry about that pressure on your panels. Overall though, I would probably give this a 5 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. I hope that some of the little tricks and tips I showed you up front are things that can help you if you plan on doing this. Just keep in mind, your upfitter switches are on the passenger side next to your battery, and it's very difficult to try to run your wires through here. I tried several times and I just did not feel confident that I wouldn't accidentally damage something or snag a wire. I know I've seen at least one YouTube channel where somebody did run a power wire through there. I wasn't going to be that risky with it. I went all the way around the front, pulled the panel off, went all the way around there, and I fed it underneath here, and it's working absolutely fantastic. Anyways, guys, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this crazy, simple, yet difficult install. And, you know, the need for additional 12-volt outlets for me is something that I can never ask enough of. I mean, shoot, if they put, you know, 2 up here, 1 in the glove box, 1 in the back, and 1 in the bed, and 1 under the seat, and 1 on the side, that would still be probably a few too little for me. I really love these 12-volt outlets, and there's so many things that still require them. I couldn't imagine why General Motors removed them from their truck. They need to bring them back. Kind of like when they got rid of air conditioning vents, then they brought them back. Hopefully they bring them back. Okay, so now this wire right here is the wire that we installed. It goes all the way around, and I used this versus the included upfitter pass-through wires that go through the firewall on this side because the wire gauge of those wires was so thin that I really didn't want to put that much current through them. They're like 18 gauge or greater, and this at least gives me the ability to run what that wire is capable, which is up to 15 amps through it, which is going to be a much better application. And because this is a 12 gauge wire, it's going to give me the ability to maintain that current even though the wire is much longer, and ultimately it circles its way back right on the other side of this firewall. I really think Ford could do better in terms of pass-through wiring. I feel they got all this space right here. They should put a good sized bundle with heavy gauge wire that passes through, so if you do need to pass any type of electronic circuit through here, you have a large enough gauge wire to be able to do it for any of your Upfitter switches. But that's why we did this, and I know a lot of people are going to say, why didn't you just use the pass-through wire that's there? Again, the main reason is it just doesn't support very much amperage.